Now, it would be wrong of me if I didn't take up this point about secular and religious totalitarianism. I was in the air before the Rabbi mentioned it. It's time I said what I think about the 20th century and its crimes and tyrannies. First, if you look at any history of the origins of fascism and the spread of fascism across Europe, from Italy over to the Iberian Peninsula, up through the Balkans to Central Europe, you take out the word fascist or fascism and put in Catholic right wing, nothing changes. You don't have to make another change. That's all that fascism was. Incidentally, I can't believe you give me the free gift of evil in war. I hope some of you have read Scoop, or Black Mischief, or Brideshead Revisited. No, we can never repay evil in war for his novels, which are mainly about profanity, adultery, blasphemy, alcoholism, and other, I consider, worthwhile pursuits. But it's true he was a very unpleasant person. And then he says, but think how bad I would have been if I wasn't a Catholic. I quote you correctly, I know. Well, I have an answer to that. I know what was unpleasant about England was private and public life. In his public life, he supported Mussolini in dropping poison gas on Ethiopia, which they called Abyssinia, in an attempt to rebuild the Italian Catholic Empire. By the way, the Ethiopian Christians were considered not Christians by the Catholics because they were victims of the monophysite heresy, so they could be killed like Albigensians. He supported the victory of Franco, supported in his turn by Hitler and Mussolini in the Spanish Civil War. He wrote in one of his novels that in 1944 that only Hitler's Germany now stood between Europe and barbarism. He supported the Ustasha regime in Croatia. He did all of those things because he was a Catholic. All of those things were part of his mandate from Holy Mother the Church, without exception. And when he wrote to a woman friend of his who was marrying again after having been divorced, he wrote to her so the letter would get to her on her wedding night saying, I hope you and your partner enjoy spitting in the face of Christ tonight in your raptures. He wouldn't have done that if he wasn't a Catholic. So religion made a nasty man, a vicious man, a mean man, a fascist. You could have picked a better writer to illustrate your point, sir. Now, that takes care of fascism. Hitler's first treaty that he ever signed was with the Vatican. In exchange for the dissolution of German political parties of Catholic persuasion in Germany, and monopoly for the church over education, a concordat was established where they ruled Germany together. In every Catholic and most Protestant churches in Germany, for every year that the Führer was in power, his birthday was celebrated by order of the authorities from the pulpit. You may not call this a secular society, sir. Look at the belt buckles worn by every German soldier. They're easy to see. You can see them in photographs. What does the belt buckle say in German? Gott mit uns. God is on our side. That's not a secular country, let alone an atheist one. I think it's frankly libelous that I should have to have it even implied or insinuated that my opinions have anything in common with the National Socialist or fascist regimes, which are the product of centuries of Catholic anti-Semitism, peasant superstition, feudal and militaristic ideas fueled by the 30 Years' War, and decades of worse, of bigotry of all kinds. Now, I've been to North Korea, which is the most Stalinized, I'll take it as the main example, the most Stalinized state there has ever been in human history. I wonder if you people have been there. It is an entirely faith-based society. It is based on the worship of two men, a father and a son. The father's dead, but he's still president of North Korea for life. It's a necrocracy, thanatocracy, a mausolocracy. His son is officially his reincarnation. They're only one away from a trinity. Everything is praise for the leader. Everything is thanks to the leader. Everything is worship of the leader. Everything is gratitude to the leader. But at least you can die and get the hell out of North Korea. You can't die and get out of the clutches of the religious. Because it's when you're dead that they tell you that the fun really begins. And that's what makes religion, as well as superstitious and silly and counter-scientific and anti-philosophical, makes it totalitarian. Because it demands absolute power over you as a creature before you're born, while you're alive, and after you're dead. It is the definition of unfreedom. It's right that so many of its gestures are submissive. Islam simply means submission. It's right that its long association with slavery continues to disfigure it, because it invites you to make a serf of yourself. I invite you in turn to emancipate yourself, strike off the mind-forged manacle, and wave goodbye to the prehistory of the human species. Thank you.
no intention of associating Mr. Hitchens' views with the views of National Socialism, and hope that he won't associate my views with the views of pedophilia. Because if you decide that the worst of a tradition embodies the antagonist with whom you are speaking, then all the terrible things that he's imputed to religion he must impute to me. And I know he doesn't any more than I impute to him all the terrible things that I impute to National Socialism, which was officially atheistic no matter what the buckles on the belt said, or Stalinism, which, again, he didn't say anything about Stalin, he didn't have time, but Stalinism was, again, officially, explicitly atheistic, as is communism. And if you want to see the difference, go from North Korea to South Korea. South Korea may not be an ideal state, but it is a vibrant Christian community, and there you will find freedom. Whereas in North Korea, you will find the worship of this tin pot dictator. But going back to the fact that he gives blood, I know it wasn't much of a transition, but I don't have a lot of time. Let's talk about what religious people, not again. Let's talk about what religious people do. I'm sorry, I'm used to a congregation where people don't call out till after the sermon. Let's talk about what religious people actually do. Are you aware of the fact that religious people give more blood, that they give more charity, that they volunteer more, that they turn out in greater numbers on voting day, that by every indices that you can find of social goodness in America, religious people do more than non-religious people? Now you may say this is a coincidence. It just happens that way. But I don't believe it, and neither should you. And when I didn't say that Mr. Hitchens couldn't bring food to a hungry person, and I hope, I feel foolish even repeating this, but I hope that all of you understood that that was a sort of sleight of hand, a rhetorical sleight of hand that he was pulling. What I said was that I'm not aware of communities, not bowling leagues, not reading clubs, not any other communities where you would find a family that was bereaved where for 3 years running and for many years into the future, they're going to get fed every weekend because they're part of a synagogue community or a church community or whatever. The question is not, can religious people do things that non-religious people can't do? Of course not. The question is, do they do things? And the answer is yes, again and again and again and again. You want to staff a soup kitchen in America? If you say we need volunteers in that soup kitchen next week, the odds are in almost any city in America, you're going to get religious people in far greater numbers. Church groups, all you have to do, every charity in Los Angeles plies me each week, please announce to your congregation that they should do this or they should do that. Why? Because they know that people who come more often to synagogue and more often to church not only live longer, have lower rates of divorce, have lower rates of depression, but they're more charitable, they volunteer more, they give blood more, on and on and on and on. They know this. So if we're talking about social utility, let's talk about social utility. If we're talking about intellectual respectability, a Pew Charitable Trust survey of the American Academy for the Advancement of Science found that more than half of all scientists believe in God. Now, if you want to say to me, okay, that means that a lot of scientists don't, yes, that's true. I'm not here tonight to convince you to believe in God. I'm actually here to convince you that the argument that religious people are bad and religion is benighted and God is stupid is an irresponsible and intellectually disreputable argument. That it's a much more complicated issue than that. And that you shouldn't be misled by the unbounded eloquence and wit of my opponents to believe that the fact that religious people do bad things mean religion is ipso facto bad. And all you have to do for evidence is look around you. I urge you, and I know nothing about the city of Rochester, I urge you to go to the soup kitchens and homeless shelters in Rochester and see whether the people who staff them are religious people. Some won't be, I have no doubt, but I'm going to bet that the vast majority will, and that most of them will be associated with churches, and that the people who do it believe they're doing God's work.